What's up guys, it's the Hockey Radar tracking drafts and prospects, and in today's video I'm going to be ranking the top 5 23 and under teams in the NHL. This includes any player of the age 23 and under, regardless of whether they are in the NHL or in their prospect pool. Kind of building on but also different than my earlier video ranking the top 5 prospect pools, where I focused only on prospects with little to no NHL experience. If you haven't seen that video, make sure you go check it out along with tons of other prospect content on my page. For a quick refresher, in my top 5 prospect pools, I had them ranked San Jose at number 1, followed by Chicago, Montreal, the New York Islanders, and the Capitals at number 5. Before I get into the top 5, just some honorable mentions, with one of them being the Ottawa Senators, whose U23 group is carried by possibly the best forward-defense combo in the under 23 age category, in Tim Stützle and Jake Sanderson. The Columbus Blue Jackets, who came really close, having some great U23 NHLers and prospects. The Predators, who have a ton of former first-rounders in their pool, but many of them who just haven't broken out yet. The Islanders, who are very top-heavy, carried by Schaefer, Cal Ritchie, etc. And Utah, who maybe has the best U23 first line in the league with Genther, Cooley, and Peterka, not to mention Caleb Desnoyers in their prospect pool. Now, getting to the rankings, starting with team number 5, and with 9 seasons of missing the playoffs, the Detroit Red Wings. Their U23 group is led by NHLers Lucas Raymond, Marco Kasper, and Simon Edvinsson, who all project to be top players for this team this year. Raymond already being one of the best young wingers in this league, and huge expectations on Kasper and Edvinsson to take that next step if they want to get back into the playoffs. Raymond is good for 75 to 80 plus points per season, which is huge for a 23-year-old, and Kasper is coming off a promising 37-point rookie campaign and will get a strong look as their second-line center. Now into their system, it's loaded with 2 of the best goalies outside of the NHL in Trey Augustine and Sebastian Cossa, and as long as one of them can develop as projected, the Red Wings' crease will be solidified for the next decade and a half. On defense, it's headlined by one of the best defensemen outside of the NHL, Axel Sandin-Pellikka, who they essentially got for Filip Hronek, and who has put together very solid numbers both in the SHL as a teenager and on the international stage representing Sweden at the World Juniors on multiple occasions. Up front, the talent continues with first-rounders in Michael Brandsteg-Nygaard, Carter Bear, and Nate Danielson, all of whom project to be second-line forwards and can hopefully provide some much-needed secondary scoring behind Larkin, Raymond, and DeBrincat in a few years. You could argue that one of the honorable mentions could be in this number 5 spot, but for me, the fact that they have one of the best U23 players in the league right now in Lucas Raymond, some of the best goalies in the prospect world, and one of the best defensemen, it was a no-brainer to include them on this list. Time will tell whether this pool will help save the Detroit Red Wings, and as good as some of these picks have been for Steve Yzerman, the clock is ticking and he may never get to see these players shine as Red Wings GM. Coming in at number 4, out of California, we have the Anaheim Ducks. Leading the way for this U23 group is second overall pick Leo Carlsson, fresh off a 45-point sophomore season, and with the increase in talent on this roster this year and the increased expectations and new coach, I fully expect him to break out this year with 60 to 65 plus points as their number 1 center. Surrounding him is 20-goal scorer Cutter Gauthier, who could hit the 25 to 30 goal mark this season, and sticking around is Mason McTavish, very savvy two-way center, who behind Carlsson forms a very solid 1-2 punch. On defense, Olen Zellweger and Pavel Mintyukov have both struggled a bit, especially with that overcrowded D-core, but the talent is there and they can still be top 4 defensemen in this league. In the system, the Ducks have a pair of talented U23 forwards in Beckett Seneca, who very well could start the year in Anaheim, and Roger McQueen of Providence College. Seneca has the size and hands to be a deadly offensive force and potential top 6 ringer for the Ducks, and although there is some injury concern with McQueen, he could also potentially slot into that top 6 in the future with the type of talent the kid has. Former first-rounder Nathan Gauthier has struggled a bit in the AHL, but could still become a bottom 6 guy for the Ducks, and Norwegian defenseman Stian Solberg is looking like a future stud for the Ducks as he excelled both in the SHL and for Norway on the international stage last year. With a couple solid years in the AHL, he could find his way onto the Ducks roster in a couple seasons. The system may not be as flashy as others, but the current U23 NHLers are the real deal in Anaheim, and with some high-end talent in Seneca and McQueen on their way, it makes this U23 group top 4 in this league. At number 3, maybe controversial, but I have the Chicago Blackhawks. In terms of sheer volume of the U23 talent, they could definitely go higher, but my reasoning for having them at 3 is the lack of solidified NHL talent compared to who I have at 2 and 1. Some of their top U23 players who should be big pieces for them seem to be taking steps back, like your Lucas Reichels and your Kevin Korchinskis, which is why I have them ranked at 3. Regardless, looking at the group, they are led by elite forward Connor Bedard, who I expect to crack the 70-point mark this season and even challenge for point-per-game pace. The question of whether he is an NHL centerman is still up for debate, however, until a number 1 center emerges in Chicago, I think they have to keep Bedard at the middle. Behind him, we have Frank Nazar, who has had a solid start so far and has already gotten paid for it. With only 26 points in 53 games last year, it's hard to say what we're in for with Nazar, but I would expect a 45 to 50 point season for him as Chicago's number 2 center. Further down the lineup, Colton Dach is still a solid bottom 6 piece. Lukas Reichel might still have that potential as well, although I think a change of scenery is what's best. Oliver Moore will be an exciting player this year, and maybe he could challenge for a middle 6 spot and push a veteran out of the lineup after coming off a 33-point NCAA season. On defense, Ethan Del Mastro and Nolan Allen still look like top 6 defensemen, and Kevin Korchinski still has upside but will need to fight for a spot in the lineup. Sam Rinzel looks like a real exciting piece for the Blackhawks, as he could potentially step into a top 4 role, maybe some power play time as well, as he is fresh off a 32-point NCAA season. Additionally, a full year of Artem Levchunov will be good for the Hawks, and if both he and Rinzel can exceed expectations, they could push veteran Connor Murphy out of the top 4 and take the Blackhawks D-core by storm. In the system, first-rounders Vanacker, Boisvert, Nestrasil, and West all look like potential second-line, maybe third-line forwards. Nick Lardis had an unreal 71-goal OHL season. Comesso and Gagin could be the future backup in Chicago behind Spencer Knight, but the pool is headlined by 3rd overall pick Anton Frondell, who will be returning to the SHL this year and potentially come back overseas to the Hawks if his season ends early and the Hawks are still playing. And he looks like a potential first-line center, which would be perfect as he could allow Connor Bedard to take the wing. Overall, the Hawks have the volume when it comes to talent. While many of the NHLers are still maybes, they have a lot of exciting potential, and they already have one of, if not the best 20-year-old in the world. At number 2, we have the Montreal Canadiens, who finished 3rd in my prospect pool rankings, but once you add their U23 NHLers, they bump up to number 2. Led by former 1st overall pick Juraj Slafkovsky and reigning Calder winner Lane Hudson, Slafkovsky didn't quite take the next steps forward that was expected of him this year, but he is still a beast on that top line, standing at 6'3", 225 pounds. He can hit, he can battle, he can score and assist. Right now he seems to be good for 50-plus point seasons, but I think he has it in him to put up 60 to 65 points, especially playing with Suzuki and Caulfield. Ivan Demidov looks like the next real deal in Montreal, as he has already put on a show in the little amount of NHL time he has gotten so far, and he is already a Calder frontrunner, slotting in on that second line and most likely getting some top power play minutes. Joe Veleno at this point is a bottom 6 guy who has some flashes here and there, but the guy who is really interesting in this U23 NHL forward group is Zach Bolduc, who came over from St. Louis in the Logan Mailloux trade and is coming off a 19-goal, 36-point first full NHL season. With the inconsistencies with some of the Canadiens forwards, like Laine and Dach, I could see Bolduc in this top 6 this year and putting up some decent numbers alongside Ivan Demidov. On defense, Caden Gooley is still a solid option in that top 4, although another step for him wouldn't hurt, but the big headliner is Lane Hudson, who is looking to build upon his 66-point rookie campaign. Even if his points stay the same but his defense improves, I would consider that as him taking the next step, as it is arguably an even more important step than increasing that point total, as if he can become solid in both ends, he could enter that top 10 or top 5 defenseman in the league conversation. In the system, they have one of the best goalies in the prospect world in Jacob Fowler, who will start in the AHL but should get some NHL looks. They also have a solid netminder in Jacob Dobeš, who looked great at times with the Habs last year. They've got some solid middle 6 potential guys like Owen Beck, Josh Waugh, Oliver Kapanen, and second rounder Alexander Zarovsky. They also have an exciting college forward in Michael Hage, who could potentially fill that second line center hole in a couple years. LJ Mooney is also looking like an early steal and could project to be a second or third line forward. On defense, Ryan Bacher is the main guy, although injuries continue to haunt him and we may see him spend yet another year in the minors. Overall, the system may not compare to the Blackhawks in terms of volume, but the talent and NHL skill level is certainly there and one of the best U23 NHL groups in this league. Last but not least, it should be no surprise we have the San Jose Sharks. Just looking at the NHLers and this system, there was no justifying putting them anywhere other than number 1. Up front, they have the elite Macklin Celebrini, who looks like the next top two-way center in this league and could challenge for 75-plus points as soon as this year. They've also got Will Smith, who had an excellent second half of the season, and William Eklund, who is fresh off 58 points. Some players who could crack the NHL roster: Michael Misa, fresh off his 134 points OHL season, really has nowhere to go except the NHL, and he could challenge for the Calder this year. Quentin Musty, who has had an unreal OHL career, if he doesn't crack the roster, he will be a top AHL rookie this season. Askarov finally looks ready to take the net for the Sharks and fulfill his number 1 goalie potential. And Shakir Mukhamadullin is looking to play a full year with the big club in a potential top 4 role. Igor Chernyshov could be one to watch, as he could have the potential to crack the NHL roster and projects to be a solid second line winger. In the system, Colin Graf is still an exciting option. Bysted, Haltinen, and Ostapchuk still have some middle six potential. On defense, Sam Dickinson leads the way and looks to be their defenseman of the future. Luca Cagnoni has already got some NHL action and could be a solid top 6 guy for them in a couple years, and Simon Wang looks like a stud on D and could fetch a top 4 role in the future. And if Askarov needed any more motivation, Joshua Ravensbergen is on the way and projects to be a very good number 1 goalie in this league. The Sharks arguably have the best U23 core of NHLers and the best U23 prospect cores in the league, and although the past few years have been rough for them, Sharks fans should be excited for what's coming. That's my rankings for the top 5 U23 groups in the NHL. As you can tell, there is some heavier weight towards the established U23 NHLers compared to the unproven U23 prospects, and in terms of both those categories, the Sharks are the clear number 1. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, like and subscribe, and stay tuned for tons more prospect content in the future, including another Saturday 2026 Draft Series video.